Hey all, this program is rated M for Mature, presenting Master and Apprentice Photography.
Cold open?
Yep, let's do it.
Yeah, well, we just did. I said it.
Yeah. It was a like rhetorical let's do it. Like not let's do the cold open, like let's do it. Like let's get it.
Oh, let's get it done?
Yeah, let's get this bread.
Okay, let's get this bread. Gotcha. Okay, so episode 8. For some reason I thought this was episode 9, but that's, the Florida public education system for you.
We don't got numbers in the sale.
That's why we do the recounts. Anyways, so yeah, this I originally was trying to think of some good topics for this one after, to try and follow up with the last episode where we talked about you going to the protests and stuff like that, and I had like a million questions afterwards, but then you sent me this article that really piqued my interest. So This episode, we're going to talk about this article that's on fstoppers.com. Since this is a podcast, you cannot see what we're looking at, but it's on fstoppers.com. The title is, "If you love photography, don't become a professional," which is kind of what you had said, like in one of the first, the first 2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah.
You're like, no, I really do love it. I promise. It sounds like I hate it, but I don't.
Yeah.
We're not going to sit here and read the article because,
right.
That's not good content. Nobody wants that. You can go read it yourself. There's some pictures too if you want to just go look at pictures. But there's a few things in the article that I wanted to bring up and discuss. So I'll jump right into it. The first one was, there's a line in here that says, "Becoming a pro photographer also means becoming an entrepreneur." Now, my first thought was like, wait, you can just like get a job at like a company and do photography work for them. But then I was like, who cares about that? Let's talk about what Marlon does. Marlon, you're an entrepreneur, right? You run your own business.
Correct. I'm self-employed. It's my company. I'm the boss.
You're the boss and the peon at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So as a self-employed professional photographer, do you want to elaborate on that and like tell us what things come to mind when you hear you also have to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, of course. So as I've mentioned many times, everything is about finding a balance, and everything is a trade-off. There's a trade-off to running your own business. There's a trade-off to being a photographer working in-house for a company. I used to work, in-house for a company as a photographer when I was first starting out, when I was 23. Mm-hmm. And it was great because I really got to practice. Like I was, getting paid to do photography. I got to practice a lot. I got to, have someone else paying for paying for the studio equipment and everything. And also, I was able to photograph models and book models and make relationship with like modeling agencies in the city, which was definitely like a very good networking opportunity. But obviously I wouldn't have to worry about finding work because, the work was just there when I walked in the morning. It was mostly just like commercial, like e-commerce photos. The work obviously got extremely, boring and repetitious after a while. The problem with working in-house is also you're not getting paid a lot. If you do ask for a raise, they can just show you the amount of CVs they got just that week. Or sorry, resumes, I guess you say in the States.
Oh no, CVs work too,
Yeah, people say CV. Sometimes they say CV and people are like, what's that? But I guess that's also Floridian education.
I was about to say, well, let's dumb it down for some of us.
So the problem is also, you don't get paid a lot, and then, there's really no room for growth when you're working in house. You're just kind of doing what they tell you to, and also, you're working for someone that's gonna, try to control whatever look you want or everything.
Now, to clarify, there's no room for growth, as in personal growth or professional or
both.
Growth? Both.
I mean, obviously, every company might have like some path where you can go from like junior photographer to like senior photographer to head of photography or whatever. But really, like, you're not going to become president of the company.
And if you're like photographing like jackets, you're gonna probably be photographing jackets for a while.
Yeah, exactly. I hate taking photos on white backgrounds now, just because I was working for that company for 2 years. But that was when my daughter was born, and like to have the stable income and have the benefits was great at the time. But when I started, and at that time I was still doing weddings on the side. I was working for another wedding photographer, so I was the assistant. I was the second photographer, and I would just hand them my images, and I wouldn't have to retouch anything. So it wasn't. It was great for that extra cash on the weekends. Mm-hmm. But then when I started working for myself and started getting my own wedding clients, Like the first month on my own, I made more than I had made that entire year working in house at that company.
Wow.
But the hard part is finding those clients when you like. It's so hard to just say, okay, I'm a photographer now, and anyone can do that. Anyone can buy. You have a camera now. You can just advertise yourself and say, hey, I'm a professional now. You know, find someone who will give you $50 to take their photo. You are a professional photographer, and no one can take that away from you. So it's a weird kind of like industry where there's no certification. You don't you don't need to be there's nothing that dictates what makes you a professional or not.
Yeah, there's no licensing or any kind of auditing committee or anything.
Standards, yeah. Exactly. So you're just, you are a photographer as soon as you say you are. Also, there are people who are amazing photographers, and I've mentioned that before when you talked about hiring, but they're not a people person. They're not good at advertising themselves. They're not good at networking.
They're not entrepreneurs?
Well, yeah, exactly. All the things that come with being a professional photographer. It's like sometimes I feel like I'm a part psychologist. I'm an accountant. I'm a marketing executive.
And you take pictures on the side.
Exactly. Yeah. Like so little of my job is actually being a photographer.
Wow. So when did you make that transition between you were working for somebody else to being self-employed entrepreneur?
I mean, I've had my own company now for 15 years, my own name, but obviously like it started off with mostly like a side thing as I was working for other people, and I guess I've been like totally independent for about 9 years now, I would say.
Wow.
It's
still a long time.
10 years now. Yeah, it's a lot better this way. I like working for myself.
Was there like a switch that you had to flip on or off in your brain when you decided to go out on your own? Like, okay, now I need to be business Marlon.
Yeah, well, the company. Well, I was already working for my own on the side, and then the company I was working for was downsizing, and I volunteered to be downsized, get a severance, and I was like, yeah, now I'll start looking for my own clients.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
So that worked out really well for you. You had a little of a cushion to fall back on in case it didn't work out.
Yeah, definitely. It was like that push to kind of finally do it instead of just waiting around. It was tough because of like I had my my first child when I was young and my wife was quite young. So it was kind of scary, like taking that step and giving up that security. But in the end, it was like the best thing for us. Wow.
I'm so glad that it worked out for you. So now we can have this podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, it'd be a completely different podcast.
Yeah, my life's ambition. Otherwise, I'd be like, hi, my name is Marlon. I take pictures on a white background every day. And that's all I know how to do.
Okay. So one of the next quotes that are in the articles, it says, not all projects are fun to work on. Now, I thought of this and I was like, well, okay, if you're self-employed, if you're the boss, don't you have the ability to pick and choose which projects you work on?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting quote, and it's accurate, especially when you're first starting out. Not all projects are fun to work on. I had to do a lot of product photography when I was starting my own business because I needed to pay the bills, and product photography is something that's extremely sought after. It's you need to be like a certain level of technical proficiency to make sure images look good, whether people are selling on Amazon or their own websites or anything. They want like these clean, bright, slick looking images. They are the most boring thing to do. I remember like I did a photo shoot and I was styling belts and ties, and I think there was like 400 pieces, and I was doing it in my living room, and they wanted each belt and tie to like look exactly the same, like if you were flipping through them to be like minimal movement, and it was such a pain in the ass. And it was like good. It was, I got paid well for it, but it wasn't photography. I wasn't really doing photography. It was more like styling. And then and there are people whose job is to, style images for photo shoot, like style the product, style food, style clothing. Usually when you're working with smaller companies, they don't have a budget for that. They don't want to do it. And, and you become the stylist, and it's, I'm not the best at it, but obviously if I'm patient and I take my time, I'll do it. Luckily now, the wedding part of my business has really taken off. So, I refuse jobs quite often now when I just don't like them. Mainly, like products and food. People call me and say, well, can you take pictures? Like, it's just 3 items I need. And I go, nope, I'm not interested, but here are some people that, that would be. Oh, well, I really wanted to work with you. And I have to tell them, like, the last thing I want to do right now is, like style these baby clothes and photograph them because like you want to start a business, and really like and the first thing people want to do, especially when they're starting out and they need images, is try to like, ask for a discount, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I'm on the opposite. I really don't want to photograph these things, so you need to pay me more just to get me
exactly
interested in doing it. So it's this sort of thing. There's always you'll always be able to find a desperate person who's willing to take on a shit job. So go look for them, because I don't have the patience or energy for it anymore.
So because you're so, I'm going to say, established now, you get to choose which projects you want to work on. But in the beginning, you basically took whatever came your way.
Yeah, I would take anything they want to pay me for, and whether it was fun or not. But I was feeding, another mortgage payment or, grocery bills, and, wasn't able to say no. So luckily I'm in a good position. But for many people, when you're a professional photographer, are not in the position I'm in, I'm very fortunate that my career has taken off.
But yeah, there's always jobs that you don't want to take, that you have to take in the beginning, it sounds like. But eventually you get to a place where you get to pick and choose. So that's good.
Right.
I could just imagine you sitting there with 400 belts and ties, just in like silence. Like,
yeah.
Eventually you start talking to the ties and the belts, I'm sure, right?
Well, you know me well enough to know that I'm never silent. So
exactly. That's why I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, don't worry. But also I'm also fortunate now, even with wedding clients, if I meet them, and they, I can start picking up on cues where my goal as a photographer is I want to create art. I want to do something interesting. I want to find new perspectives. I want to challenge myself as an artist, and I want to bring, I want to capture the emotions of their day and really bring that. And when people start asking me well, are you going to give me every photo you take? Are you going to give me all the raws? And, are you going to make me look skinny? A lot of people just meet me and they go, well, I just want you to make me look skinny. And you know what? Maybe our priorities aren't in the same place. There's 4 other people that emailed me for this wedding date. Maybe I'm going to hold off and try to find a couple that's a better match for me. So I'm lucky that I have enough people contacting me to be able to do this, because, there are people that are, wedding photographers. They might get 5 weddings a year, and they're going to take these couples on, regardless of if it's a good fit or not. They want to build their portfolios, build their experience.
But yeah, it sounds like it could be super difficult for them, and it's a lot of work, and it's probably not worth the pay. But when you don't have that many jobs coming in, you got to take it.
Exactly.
So not all projects are fun to work on. That is that,
and you have to find that.
Sounds like,
yeah, you need to find that style of photography. I get a lot of calls, oh, do you do graduation photos, for high school? I say absolutely not. Oh, well, we've seen your portraits. They're excellent. I said, yeah, if someone wants to hire me. One person wants to hire me to take their portrait, I have no problem doing grads, but I'm not going to, have 500 people in a line standing up, sitting down, click, 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 next, click, 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 next, click, 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 next. It's not for me. I'd rather work for 1 hour one-on-one with one person than, spend a day working with 500 people.
Wow, that's definitely a good point, yeah. Okay, so on to the next quote in this article. In reality, the actual act of taking images ends up being only a small percentage of the responsibilities of a professional photographer. That seems very interesting, because as a professional photographer, how much time do you think you realistically spend on the business side of things compared to taking and editing photos?
Right. Luckily, a lot of my business comes from word of mouth within our the community here. So I don't need to spend so much time advertising, but a lot of my time is, endless email chains, setting up photo shoots. Okay, well, what time do you want to start? And that's another email chain of, okay, what's your schedule like? What's my schedule like? And then it's, okay, what location? Well, I like this. You like this. Well, there's also this, etc. What should I wear? There's a lot of back and forth with things like that. There's lots of, just doing technical things, not just the retouching, but, making sure my cards are backed up, organizing my files, posting content on my social media. These are all things that take time, and it's different when it's a hobby, but when it's your business, it's, you're just not struggling, but you're scrambling to stay relevant as much as possible. Clients' expectations, meeting with clients, meeting new clients. If I'm meeting with a couple and they want to meet at, 6 o'clock downtown when they're done work, so it takes me maybe an hour to drive downtown through traffic, meet with them. Maybe I'm talking to them for an hour and a half because I talk a lot. And then I have to drive home again, maybe through less traffic. So it's, a 30-minute drive. Okay, so that meeting just took, 3 hours of my day.
Yeah, okay. So I can see where the business side of things takes up a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably you have more time when you're first starting out than when you're more established. Because like you said, like people come to you at this point. You don't have to seek out clients. You don't have to basically market yourself and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, you have everything down to a science. I'm sure you meet the clients, you go over the same questions, you discuss the same types of things.
Right.
Your contract has basically been the same for probably a while now. So like you hammered that out pretty quickly, stuff like that.
Well, I had to change my my contract to the deposit paragraph in my contract to include like pandemics.
So that's actually that's interesting because you have to like adjust with the times and things that you don't anticipate happening. Like all of a sudden, hey, here's a pandemic going on. Time to go update my paperwork. Like
exactly.
I'm sure photographers don't deal with that. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Okay, so let's see. What is the next quote we have here? Actually, going through these pretty good. I should have done the 2 pages worth of quotes like I had. So, okay, this one, I read this and I was like, wow, that's really cool. You need excellent people skills in order to get new clients.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as you just said, you get a lot of word of mouth clients and whatnot, but this is something you've been saying, I think, since episode 1, that people skills are super important as a photographer.
Yep. On
a typical photo shoot, like, how many people do you think you interact with prior to you even taking your first photo?
Well, if it's a fashion shoot, let's say, like there's a production company I work with in Montreal. I'll give them a shout out. They're called Rebel, REBL. Become like one of my favorite, clients to work with. They're very cool, very interesting vibe going on all their projects. So when they do mostly video, so when they do have a photography component, they call me quite often. When I walk in their jobs, there might be a creative director, a production director, whoever's doing the shoot. If there's like models, representatives of the company that's hired the production company to produce this stuff, set designers, models, hair and makeup, etc. So I might have to say hi to 10 people before I actually even start setting up.
Wow.
And that's not including like I might do the light setup the day before.
Oh yeah, that does include like them reaching out to you and saying, hey, this is what we need you to do, and then I'm sure there's some back and forth there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Wow.
There's always back and forth
and
and meetings and emails chains and phone calls and FaceTimes and
wow. So that is a lot of people you deal with.
All those 10 people you speak to you have to come across as professional, and you don't want to be boring because you are the artist on set.
Ooh, so you have to like set a tone.
Exactly. I remember I worked at a family portrait studio when I was 22. I think I mentioned this before, and it was like a very boring like type of environment. Like they would do lots of like these cheesy type poses, like hand on the chin, with like the old style muslin backgrounds. And they'd put a plant on either side, sort of thing, like a very very old school style of photography. And there was a dress code. Like he wanted me in like a dress shirt and a tie and slacks. And it was always funny. He's like, yeah, because we want to come across as professional, like a dentist office. And like he would always say like dentist, like a dentist office. And I was like, a dentist office is literally like the least sexy, like most boring fucking place I can think of. Like
it's always like all white and like just so bland. Yeah.
No, it's not even white. It's like this beige drab, sort of thing, like no personality. And listen, when I show up to a wedding, yes, I am wearing a suit, but like I don't wake up and I'm like, oh, I want to look like a dentist.
Yeah.
Like how fucking boring is that? Like if that was my life, is trying to be like, is like a dentist. And it's not that like I show up with like a funky green mohawk on set, but like I have a personality. I'm never going to hide my personality. Some people don't like it and some people love it. And that's fine. There's definitely a market for every type of artist. There are photographers, there's, who are very soft spoken and a bit more gentle, and people really love that approach. People love it when I'm swearing, at their grandmas. So, or flirting with them, which I do a lot, as well, but it's also, you have to find that, you have to find that proper balance. You don't want to be a creep either.
Yeah.
You don't want to be, insensitive. You don't want to be offensive, and you don't want to, bother people. But you still want to be funny. You want people to want to work with you. Oh, Marlon's going to be on set. Great. Like I'm excited to go to work, with him, sort of thing. And it's also, how you interact with your own team. I've worked with other photographers, and I've seen them scream at stylists and makeup artists, and which was always like bonkers to me.
Yeah, why would you scream at your coworkers, essentially?
Yeah, but that's how people are. You see it in the movie industry a lot. In production, you do see these like people with extreme personalities, and people put up with them. If they're, I guess, if you're talented to an extent, but like I'd be mortified to do that. Like, I've never spoken to an assistant of mine like that, or especially like hair and makeup. Like there's times when I'm like, oh, by the way, like maybe this isn't translating well in photos. Can we just change this? Is there anything you can do? Like super respectful, but.
And what if they say no?
Well, I mean, it's their job, so no one said no. I mean, if someone straight up told me no, I'd probably laugh and I'd respect that. Like,
exactly. Yeah. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. I mean, real recognize real. I'd be like, great. Like, we can be best friends after this, but I'm really gonna need you to fix this fucking makeup.
Okay.
But I was on a job actually. We were photographing people that have been in. And we're talking out about maybe like depressing issues, things like that. It was like an expose. So there was a video component. I was doing the stills, and the sound guy would keep asking the subjects like personal questions, and like someone had to speak to him and be like, "Yo, you're the sound guy. Like, hold the boom mic." Like they're being interviewed, like don't interject your opinion. And he's like, well, you keep asking them. And I'm like, I'm trying to photograph them. Like I need to draw out certain expressions that I need, right? Like you're there to make sure like the sound is like sound guy's an important job, but like you can't,
The sound guy is literally like one of those people that stays in the background.
Exactly. So
like you don't interact.
Yeah, exactly. I don't. I'm very extroverted, quelle surprise, and like I don't want to stay in the background, but that's why I do what I do, and that's why I thrive at what I do. I'm able, like being in these situations, I'm super comfortable with. But it's it's also when I'm assisting other photographers, I'm not like talking to the models like as the shoot is going on. Like I'm sitting there, checking the monitor, making sure the lighting's looking good. I'm not trying to overstep everything. So there is a lot of interpersonal relationships you need to cultivate. It's also the way you act on set or at a wedding is extremely important to your own brand. It's not that I show there and I'm like, oh, I'm trying to be more professional than someone else, but I'm I have my own brand of the way I talk and act, and it's a real important part of it because and I've mentioned this before, I know people who are excellent photographers, their photos are amazing, and I'm able to judge photography. Like I see the image, I'm like, great, that's a great photographer. Like I don't care, I care about the end result. But for someone else, you're spending an entire day with this photographer. Like it's not just the end result, it's also how comfortable you are in front of that person.
Okay, and so that's what they mean by you need excellent people skills in order to get new clients. Basically, that's also the same for if you want to retain past clients and keep them as future clients. You have to make yourself interesting, because you said you've had people call you back and be like, oh, we saw you at this wedding. You were, really talkative. You cracked a bunch of jokes. We liked you. Can you come shoot our wedding? Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, the people skills definitely translate very well for a photographer.
Yeah, exactly. Have you been in like a wedding party? Like, have you been a groomsman at someone else's wedding?
Yes.
Can you remember any of the photographers that have taken your photos?
I think the last one I was in, which was actually like the biggest one that I was in, I think there was like 2 or 3 photographers, but I can't like remember anything about them.
Right, you can't remember anything about them. You didn't follow them on social media or anything?
No.
Okay, so right there, like that's a failure on the photographer's point. I make sure the first thing I do when I meet bridal parties, the day of the wedding, I memorize their names right away. I'm able to do this. I'm not sure if it's because of my biology degree. When people go, oh, well, like, that's so weird. You have a biology degree, but you're a photographer. Like, what do you use it for anything? I'm like, yeah, I can memorize bullshit really fast and forget it the next day. So yeah, I can remember names very easily. I'm very good with faces and names. Some of my bridal parties, end up being like upwards of 20 people. I can remember their names. They can tell me their names once or twice, and I know them for the day. There's no one I work with that I don't want them to remember, that like I want them to remember my name. And I'm like, oh wow, like we should be friends on Instagram, everything like that. Then they can see more of my work and things like that. I get a ton of work that way. like so much work, like being friends with people. And then if they do hire me and I see them the next time, they're always impressed. They're like, oh yeah, I remember you from this person's wedding. Yes, I remember you. Oh, you're a doctor at this hospital, and I know you were doing your residency in cardiology. Like, and they're always impressed that when you remember that, and like that's the type of brand, and I want to associate with me. I'm not just
to you, yeah.
I'm not just showing up and I'm like, oh, like he swears a lot and he's, and he's sarcastic. But like when you actually take the time to be interested in people, like they realize that the sarcasm and stuff, it's like, it's humor. Like I'm not just, you don't mean anything to me. Like meeting, I do, like that's my favorite part of the job is meeting new people and like learning, experiencing different cultures, people's different backgrounds and everything. It's for me, that's what's most interesting. And that's what gets me a lot of work. Like I can, regardless, I'm a photographer, but when I meet with someone, whatever industry they're in, I want to be able to speak with them at their level and be able to, to get that meaningful connection. It's really important for business. It's also important for photography to be able to interact with people and be able to connect with them.
Very cool. Okay, so next quote is, you may also find that once you're a professional, you start to view photography differently. Something that was once a joy and a release is now welded to pressure, work, stress, anxiety, and wondering when that next paycheck will come in. You may second guess yourself into wondering whether you're in the right genre, whether you should rebrand yourself, or whether or not you're working for the right clients to further your career. Wow. So yeah, reading that one line, I was like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. That sounds very frightening. Did you have to deal with that as you were starting off?
So I definitely had to deal with that starting off because the difference between our approaches to photography is, I graduated university. I had a child really young, a surprise child. Don't worry. I still love. I love my children very much, but our first child was a surprise, and I was like, oh, okay, I need to start working right away and making money, and like you have an established career already. So for you, photography, you can do what you want with it, have as much fun as you want. If you do end up, wanting to start, selling your work, great. And if not, like you're still going to survive exactly how you've been surviving. Mm-hmm. So, you don't have to worry. Just focus on doing what you want. And, hopefully, you grow to a level of proficiency, where number one, you're happy with it. And if other people like it too, like that's awesome. For me, I was like, oh, how can I enjoy taking photos that people will pay for? And like we already had that talk, right, of the Marilyn Monroe photo, and like, oh, there was no bokeh in that. So, or for the people who haven't listened to any other episodes, we said like, oh, so it might be very popular on Instagram to see like a photo with like a super blurry background, and that sells. That definitely sells. It has that commercial appealing look. Will it stand the test of time and be like, one of these impactful, transcendent images? Probably not, but do what sells. So like, family pictures, go to the park, everyone wear white, like a nice, backlit sunset photo, click, 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 boom. There you go, pay me, it was nice meeting you, etc. And it's not that I would do that and come home and be like, oh, I hate my life. Like I'm not, like this wasn't art. Like it wasn't, but I wasn't angry. I was still outside in a park taking pictures, of a family laughing. Like they'll be happy with the images. Like it'll, give them they'll probably keep them like the rest of their lives. So I'm not, I'm not coming home angry.
But it felt like work to you, right?
Yeah, it's definitely work. It's not, so I love doing documentary family shoots. What I mean by documentary is like where I'm in the home and it's not formal or posed whatsoever. You just let the kids do whatever they want, and I'm just there to, capture what I see as something interesting. Whether you're letting them get messy with paint, like, eating messy food and getting, if they're eating spaghetti and getting all the pasta sauce around their face, and I zoom in and just take like a photo of like just their chin and mouth sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So like staying away from that typical style, like, so I actually really enjoy doing that. And for me, it was like hard, like, so family, like that documentary family photography is what I'm trying to promote more of now. I don't need to because I do a lot of weddings, so it's good because now I can tell people if they call for a family shoot, oh, well, we really just want to wear like the same matching outfits as grandma and, go to this field. I can go, okay, cool. Well, I'm not really into that anymore. Here are some other people whose work you might enjoy. Like if you want me to get your kids having a pillow fight on the bed, like I'm your guy.
Yeah, you gotta. It's not just about the money now; it's about you having fun too.
You're right, and so like being able to establish myself and have a much bigger financial cushion has helped me now be able to be pickier and choosier with what I do as an artist. When it comes to second guessing yourself, I've never second guessed myself in my life. That's not the type of person I am, which is neither good nor bad, because that's also sometimes I should have second guessed myself, but there are times when, especially in weddings, you have to balance, like, do I take the safe shot or do I want to try to create something different? Me as an artist, obviously I want to try taking something different. I don't want to mess it up and then miss out on a shot either. So it's about, you need to have the courage to do new things. It's also, at one point you don't want to get settled into your ways. Like, I don't live in the biggest city. I mean, I'm not rural. Like, I still live in a big city in North America, but I tend to photograph a lot at the same venues. So I know, like, okay, well, this photo in this exact spot always works. Like, it's safe, it's good, but am I doing myself a disservice as an artist? And like, those are things that I have to think about. And part of that is like, well, that this is my brand. Like, I need to stay like on brand with what I do, but I'm not staying up at night with anxiety thinking about that. It's just, something, it's like a philosophical discussion I need to have with myself, every once in a while. And like, luckily I'm now, I'm starting able to push it more. And it's just making sure you have the clients and being able to openly ask them, like, hi, you saw my work, you saw this wedding that I did at this venue. I don't want to do the same things over and over again, so I am going to try new things. Like, I will always take like the safe shot to make sure I have it, but you know what? I'm gonna, maybe I took this at a downwards angle. You know what? I want to see what it looks like upwards. Sort of thing. And
I mean, if you take 10,000 to 15,000 shots in a single wedding, then you're gonna have some safe shots and some risky shots, but hopefully it balances it out.
Yeah, of course. Listen, this is also me overthinking things that I don't need to, because every client I've ever delivered images are like, wow, great. There's so many pictures. We're so happy. So
you're the only one having this conversation in your head. Like,
yeah.
Like, oh, it's just too risky. Oh no, I don't think it's gonna pan out.
Yeah, no one else gives a shit. And like, listen, I won awards for photos that like the couple didn't even like. I shouldn't say they didn't like, but like, they were just like, oh yeah, cool, that's artsy, but I really like this one of just like me and my grandma's face right next to each other looking straight down to the camera. So you're like, yeah, sure.
Maybe that's one of the things that they should have touched on in this article is how do you deal with that feeling when something you took that you're like, this is garbage, and then people give you an award for it or they put it on their wall. Like, how to cope with that.
Yeah, you won't get an award for a garbage photo, but yeah, people will put it on their wall. And I think they did mention in the article, I remember a line that said, like, images that sell are not necessarily good images.
Yeah, I do remember seeing that too, yeah.
Yeah, and so like, that's the line that stuck out for me, because yeah, you know what? Here's a picture of a box of donuts. Great. Put it on Instagram. And like, it sells, like, I get, like, they paid me money, but am I happy with the images in terms of like, wow, like, I'm so fortunate to be able to be doing what no, like, I didn't, they're just literally just a product on a white background. Like, they're well lit, they're bright, and made sure the colors are, not too oversaturated, but still bright enough to pop, etc. I take what I do very seriously, but, in the end, like, I'm never even going to look at those images ever again.
Okay. So how long into your career did it take for you to get to a point where you're like, where you felt more secure about your decision to become a professional photographer? Is there any like defining moment, or is there any point in time where you're like, I'm glad I did this, this is panning out?
I mean, quite early on, I felt comfortable with it.
Okay.
When you do deliver photos to a client, they are ecstatic to see them, and they love everyone. I get messages all the time like, oh, I'm going through the images, we're crying, like, reliving the day. We can't believe all these, memories you've captured that we weren't even privy to, like, we didn't even notice, like, these moments, like, thank you so much, like, all these details, like that. For me, I'm like, wow, like I really made a difference. Like, I'm so happy to be able to provide that for people. Like it's for me, it's the best feeling in the world. Knowing that something I put so much passion into, like, really resonated with someone.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely definitely like that. But like, I've been on commercial shoots where it's not like they're gushing over photos. They're just like, yeah, there's some cool shit. Let's work again sometime. And I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I'm happy. Like that also makes me happy. I when you're an entrepreneur, you are working like more hours than, let's say, someone with a typical office job. But I do get to do a lot of my editing from home. I do get to spend a lot of time with my kids. So even though, it can be tough as a professional photographer, I do feel very privileged that, I do have a work-life balance that not a lot of other people do. When I was, studying biology, I wanted to be a doctor. But now when I speak to my friends who are in the medical, field, especially now these days when they're working, 80, 90 hours a week, and they're not having the best of times, these months. And then, I'm I'm playing Mario Party with my children, teaching them math and stuff. So,
yeah,
it's a good bonus.
Yeah, and being a wedding photographer, not a lot of people get married, Monday through Friday, pretty much, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, and I get a few weekday weddings, but that's us Jews. We're wacky like that.
Okay. So going back to my question though, so how long into your career is there any point in time where you started getting so many weddings a month or so many weddings booked in advance where you're like, okay, this is going to pan out now, or did it just like fall into it?
Well, when I was working in that e-commerce studio, I was getting about 5 weddings on my own every year, which was like, for me, it was great bonus money. And then when I went out on my own, I started like small advertising on social media. It started becoming like 10 to 15 weddings a year, plus like the odd commercial jobs and family portraits and things like that. So I felt like, oh, well, I'm already making double my salary that I was like in the e-commerce studio. Like I would love to have more work, but so it was, it would be like tense sometimes waiting between jobs, but then some months would be like a flood of jobs. So, we had to learn how to budget and properly save and manage everything. And also like having a child young, there's a lot of that stress. Mm-hmm. Like usually when you're starting a career out, you're not worrying about like family planning and, paying for school and, and other associated childcare costs. But that's not a photography related thing. That's if we're doing a podcast on, parental responsibilities, but
but it goes hand in hand though, because like,
yeah, as an entrepreneur,
you're jumping into this and you're like, okay, I have all these extra responsibilities that I also need to focus on.
Yeah, you're right.
The fact that it worked out though for you, basically right out the gate, almost actually pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I'm saying right out I'm looking at it fondly with like rose-colored glasses because it did work out, but I'm not an anxious person, whereas my wife is not. She's not a super anxious person, but she's maybe a bit more responsible than me. Mm-hmm. So I've always been don't worry, everything's gonna work out. And if it didn't work out, I'm able to find like I wouldn't be happy doing like having another career or another job, but I'm not. I've never had a hard time finding a job, so I wasn't worried. I knew I always had, like, I still had a science degree to fall back on. Like, I wasn't worried about, if I don't book this amount of weddings, I'm going to be homeless.
So you did have a backup plan, so that's always good.
I didn't have a backup plan. I just knew that I would be able to come up with a plan.
you had a backup idea?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
A backup theory?
Right. I mean, right now my backup plan is OnlyFans. But
let's hope this podcast takes off.
Yeah. My OnlyFans would just be this podcast, but like video recorded, and I'd be naked.
So the only difference would be video recorded?
yeah, basically. With like a second camera under the desk.
Well, you have enough cameras now.
Yeah. Well, Fujifilm just released that update that lets you use them as webcams. So
that's dangerous.
Yeah, we're good.
Onlyfans.com/Marloned.
Yeah.
Okay. Got a little off topic there. I love when we go off topic on weird stuff like that, though. I'm cool with that.
It's all good.
Okay, so this is the last quote that I have from this article.
Right.
It says here, as a pro photographer, you'll also be met with fierce competition.
Mm-hmm. My favorite.
So I thought of this, and I remember you always say, like, you always refer to other photographers in your area as competitors, but then you say, we compete for the same jobs. You always correct yourself saying we compete for the same jobs, so you don't always refer to them as, like, a competitor. So what's your take on dealing with competitors, and do you handle clients differently if you know that they're shopping around for other photographers?
Okay, so let me start this off, because if I go full Marlin here, I'm going to start off with a little disclaimer that there is a lot of fierce competition in photography, especially in wedding photography. A lot of my competitors, whether or not they ever listen to this podcast or episode, a lot of them I do consider personal friends. I like them as people. I like them as photography too. But when it comes to work, like I want to crush them. I want to crush them professionally, not physically, but.
Is that why you're taking all those fighting classes?
Yeah. Well, yes, my hobby is martial arts, but no, I do not want to.
Completely unrelated.
To physically fight. Yeah, completely unrelated. I don't want to physically fight my competition. But like, if a wedding was ever like attacked by ninjas or like Die Hard style, and I had to like climb around the vents, like I'm down for that.
Okay, now we know Marlin Stream. Okay.
Yeah, I'd rather fight wedding guests than other wedding professionals.
Okay.
That's a different podcast. So like when in terms about competition, there's a lot of competition in wedding photography. A lot of other photographers like to complain about competition. They hate when someone new comes on the scene, charging less, with less experience, etc. I am all for it. I think it's healthy in my industry. I think it's healthy in any industry. You need competition. You need new people coming up. You need people that push you and to think differently. I guess I'm very just libertarian like that. In like when it comes to like specifically the photography industry, like you do what you want. I'm a believer of cream rises to the top. I have dealt with people who have been jealous when I've gotten a job, when I've photographed a celebrity client, and they're like, how did you get that job? And you have to be like, yo, fuck you, I got the job because I'm awesome, you know? Like, I got my job because you know, and I'm like the first one to be like, I got the job because you suck. That's why you didn't get the job, you know? I don't like when people, like, I take my work extremely personally, and like when people, like, I don't deal well with other people's insecurities. Well, if they're not paying me to be conscientious of their insecurities, like, it's not my job to, you know, if someone's gonna make a passive aggressive comment to me, I'm not gonna be like, hey, don't worry, you're a great photographer, you'll get these jobs too. Like, no, because I want to take those jobs from you as well. Like, so don't, you know, like, I'm not there to pat you on the back and say, don't worry, you know, like, obviously I've been doing this 15 years. If someone's like, hey, I'm starting out in the industry, I'm not gonna like stomp on their dreams and tell them they suck. I'm going to take all their clients. If they're like photographing their own friends in their backyard for like $25 a pop, like, you know, like, like, don't worry, I'm all for it. But, you know, like, this podcast is called Master and Apprentice, and that's taken from Star Wars, and that's something I've, like the bad guys in Star Wars, like the Sith. It's like, they're always trying to be the master. They're always trying to be like the Sith Lord. And like, there's always an apprentice that's trying to take over their spot. And the whole point is, well, if your apprentice is able to overtake you, then you weren't that good to begin with. And like, that's how I view things. If someone wants to hire someone else, like, it's their prerogative to find a better deal or anything like that. I've lost out on weddings that I know they've been shopping around for other photographers. Sometimes it's purely a budgetary decision, and like, that doesn't bother me as much. Sometimes it's, you know, it's a personality issue. You know, they want someone that's like, oh my God, you're so stunning. You look stunning. Oh my God, you're so beautiful. Yes, keep at it. Great. Oh wow, you're beautiful. You're beautiful. Like, that's not who I am. And if you need that, like, you don't hire me, and that's absolutely fine. And you know, I don't think I've ever had someone like say like, oh, my quality of work isn't up to par. But, you know, sometimes it's a stylistic issue, and that's okay. I used to take it a lot more personally. But, you know, now I'm just like, hey, you know what? Some clients aren't my cup of tea either. I get it. You know, do what you got to do. And I tell everyone, like, I think my packages are extremely competitive for the quality of my work. I tell people, like, you know, you get what you pay for. You can definitely go with someone cheaper. as I mentioned before, I've known of beginning photographers who have lost, like who have a corrupted memory card and they didn't prepare for that and they lose all their work. So that, like that, those are the kind of roadblocks you get into when you're paying for me. You're also getting like experience and problem solving and etc. But like people are allowed to shop around for whomever they want, and it's my job to try to get all the clients I can. Like, and I love it when they tell me, "Oh, well, we met with 5 other photographers. Like, we knew right away we wanted to go with you." Great.
That's what you live for.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. That's it's the greatest feeling in the world for me.
It's like, of course you did.
Yeah.
And when they don't choose you, you're like, just lie to me and say it was because of the money. Don't say it was because of the quality.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I used to not ask, but sometimes you get someone that's courteous and they, hi, we just want to let you know, like, thank you for meeting with us, etc. Like, we're going in a different direction. I used to be like, well, I don't want to like ask and be like, why? And it's always funny because I guess like in my industry, it's like you kind of like want to be the opposite of like dating. It's like, you don't want to be too thirsty, but like, oh, hey, like, we spoke the other day, I'm just following up, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like, when you're dating, if someone's like not going to write you back, you're like, I'm not going to be the desperate,
Yeah.
Who's like, hi, are you there? Hi, are you there? Hi, are you there? Please respond. Please respond. But now when it's like, if it's like potential clients and money, I'm like, hey, what's up? I just want to let you,
just following up.
What's going on? Yeah. Following up. Let me know if you have any questions, etc. So, but now I can, like someone's like, please tell me what I did wrong. I'm not, not that, but I'm just like, hey, I'm just curious, like, is it terms of, photography, etc. Like what's on your mind? I just want to do this so I know how I can maybe, offer my clients like something else I might be overlooking. And I've gotten like pretty interesting responses. Like it was never photography related, but like a lot of it is usually budget, and that I can understand, and I can, and I've tried making like smaller, cheaper packages as well, like one photographer, which got me some good work, like being able to give someone like an option that's still at my standard quality of work has helped.
Yeah, but you can't go too cheap because, like you said, you can't do 50% of the work.
No, I'm never going to devalue myself. But in terms of like, because I specialize in a lot of these big weddings, which are 200 all the way up to 500, 600 people, but sometimes people are just 90 people. They're not having a huge wedding. They don't need me for 15 hours, sort of thing.
And so, they can get by on like one photographer, probably.
Exactly, like one photographer, 8 hours. It's something that I like last year. I pushed a lot of like, oh well, you can just do one photographer for a half day, and it worked out. They were very happy with the images, and I'm quite capable of covering a whole wedding by myself. And actually, sometimes I even was like, oh, like these smaller, low key weddings, I kind of like doing everything on my own.
You like being in control?
Not really, but like it's nice to be able to sort through the photos and not have it like jump from my photo system to another angle, etc. It was a bit more, I guess, like one vision, a bit more concise.
Okay, so it's a little more casual.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it is funny that you brought up the fact that you had questioned them, not questioned, but like you requested feedback, basically, of like why didn't you pick me type thing.
Yeah. Especially
in terms of the topic of this episode. That's a very like business conscious decision that you normally wouldn't have to deal with if you weren't like running your own thing.
Is it because of my skinny calves? This is the hardest place to add mass.
I'm sure you'd be much happier with that answer than they don't like the quality of your photos.
Well, yeah, exactly. If someone was like, hey, like, we don't want you at your wedding, you're actually quite unattractive, and we really don't want you messing with, like, the vibe of our day. I'd be like, but you like the photos that come out of the camera? And they're like, oh, yeah, the photos are great. I'm like, okay, no, there's no problem. I understand.
Portfolio's top notch. You're just too ugly for our wedding, sorry.
For anyone listening at home that hasn't seen a photo of me, I'm quite attractive, so don't get any ideas.
Yeah, some of this podcast is fiction.
Joe and I are quite handsome fellows.
Okay, so that is all the quotes from this article. This was a very interesting article to read. Very enlightening.
Yeah. I actually found the article very negative. And it's funny because, like, I'm the master of being negative, where I'm, like, on this podcast where I just kind of, like, vent my feelings and I'm, like, just yell at Joe for a week, where I'm like, yeah, this fucking client who like asked for this and it's fucking bullshit. And like I spent, trying to like be creative and this person's like, well, just make me look skinny. I'm like, fuck you, and like this article comes out and it's like, well, being an entrepreneur kills your love for photography. And I'm like, no, not really. Like there is bullshit you have to deal with, but
I was very surprised you were defending it so much. I was like, wow, okay. I was not expecting this.
I mean, I read the article and like, yes, it resonates with you, but it's the same thing. Like if you want to be a professional woodworker, like you're going to make cabinets and someone's not going to like your cabinets. You're going to have the exact same issues with anything. And I think it's like it's a common thing where you need like 3 hobbies, one for money, one for enjoyment, and like one for growth, or one for health sort of thing. And like, whereas like for health, I have my martial arts, and I guess like my hobby for, for enjoyment and money, like kind of became photography. So I'm, it was always photography, but now I'm just trying to balance the two.
Okay. So we went through all the article. I have a question now for you. What would you say to somebody who's been doing photography as a hobby for years and wants to break into it as a profession?
And, the article was fairly negative. I just want to point out to like anyone, that this isn't like you could take that exact article and replace it with any other profession that, someone wants to go into business for themselves, and you'll be getting a lot of the exact same questions. So I don't think this is necessarily a photography thing. Like if you wanted to open your own florist, shop, you're still going to get the same questions and same blowback from people, like in terms of competition and how are you going to brand yourself? Like, well, like if you like gardening, but what's going to be like when a client is telling you like, well, they would have done the bouquet like this, etc. So for anyone that wants to break into photography, like you're still going to get the same feedback as if you told someone like, oh, well, I want to get my own truck and do long haul trucking. I want to, open up my own restaurant, etc. Like being an entrepreneur is the thing that people, I don't want to say put you down for, but will start to question. And a lot of it, I shouldn't say a lot of it, but some of the points, though they're valid, a lot of people are also just projecting their own insecurities on. Like people would love to work for themselves, and these are the things they question about doing it. Like no one likes going to an office and being told what to do or being yelled at by someone. And yes, the security is great, but people are scared about like, going out on their own and possibly failing at it. And you shouldn't listen to those people. You should always kind of just, if you have the self-awareness and you think you're good enough, like you should just go for it. If you've been doing photography as a hobby for years, like I'm presuming that if you want to be professional, you already have that technical proficiency. There's a lot you can learn on the job as you start doing more and more professional gigs. You will get better. You will learn more. I've been doing this a long time. I still learn more. Every year I try to improve and see what, little minutia I can work on. I think people should go for it, and I think that if you have an inkling to do something professionally, and if you don't do it, you'll always have that doubt in the back of your mind, like, well, I wish I tried. You might try it and not even enjoy it, but it'll always bother you for not trying. You might try it and really love it, and it's true that it might make you a bit jaded on terms of photography in general. Like there are days where whenever I'm doing the job, I'm always, professional, and I'm always, in a good mood. There's sometimes when just, like you get ridiculous emails, you get the ridiculous requests from choosing beggars, and it kind of like drags you down. But it doesn't mean like I hate picking up my camera and being creative. It just, I hate the bullshit that comes with it. But it's not like I loved every other job I've ever had, like being a manager at the Gap or, or delivering furniture. So, so it's not like someone's like, yeah, I don't understand. Can't you do this for free? It's good exposure. And I'm like, wow, I really wish I was at the Gap now folding clothes, because I don't.
So you say that you didn't lose the love for photography just because you started doing it professionally?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you also said that when you're not on a photo shoot, you're using your iPhone.
Oh yeah, so I get burnt out. There's times when I just don't want to pick up a camera and I just
Okay.
can't. I'm like creative burnt out. Doesn't mean I don't want to do it. It's, listen, sometimes you come home from work. I love my kids, and my son goes, "Hey daddy, you want to hear every character I want to see in Mario Kart 9?" And then just like names every single like video game character he's ever heard of. And like I love my kids, I love my son more than more than anything. I want to hear all the characters, but like for my own mental health, I can't just listen to a child list video game characters for 2 hours. So it's not like, oh, I don't love you, I don't want to hear the characters, but it's like I just can't. Like there's times when, especially in the summer, if I'm working 70 hours a week shooting weddings, like I wake up like a zombie, and if my wife is like, "Oh, come, let's take pictures in the park," no, let's not. But it doesn't mean that like I wouldn't enjoy it if I was like physically capable of of like had the energy to do it. But
Okay.
yeah. So like I still love and it's things also like if someone called me if it was like a great job, for instance, if a model or a band I was really into was like, "Oh, we really want some cool portraits. Like we really want something like out there. Like what can you do?" I was like, "Oh, like yes, I would like love to do that." So like I don't stop loving photography. I fall out of love with the photography business, not with photography. And it's, you know what? And that's it's a balance. It's a trade-off. Like I always say it, and it's hard to find that between them both, and it even took me quite a while to even like to separate photography from the photography business.
Okay. Wow, that's actually better information than I've gotten from that article. That's a more compelling reason why you shouldn't get into photography or you shouldn't get into the photography business if you love photography, because you get that burnout, it seems like, and you love photography, but you just can't do it when you've spent 70 hours on a photo shoot or whatever.
Exactly. Like if you love let's say you love photographing your child's dance recitals, and it's a lot of fun. You take your camera, you have a fancy zoom lens, and all of a sudden the other parents go like, "Wow, I really like your photos." Like, you know what? Like, what if we each give you $20 and you just, take a few snaps of our kids, and you're thinking like, "Oh, wow, cool. I'm already here. I already have my camera, and like, I might make a few $100, like just taking pictures." And you do that, and you think like, "Oh, it's great." But then like, as soon as that interaction happens, people feel entitled to be like, "Well, you took more photos of Becky's kids. Like, how come they got 4 and I only got 3? And like, oh, oh, well, you didn't catch this part of the dance. Like, she did this jump, and you didn't, And then at one point, you're like, "Oh, you know what? Fuck you, fuck this."
All of a sudden, it's not fun anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And like, and I think I've even mentioned that before. So like, these are things like I've obviously have thought of before. None of that's new information. It's about being consistent, not always about doing, great work. Like there are people who like can take amazing portraits, but not necessarily like every time they show up to a photo shoot, they're going to have that standard quality of work. So maybe on Instagram, you see 10 of their best portraits and they're all great, but maybe they had to do, 20 photo shoots to get there. And what about the other 10 photo shoots you don't see?
Yeah.
Whereas like when I go to a photo shoot, like I'll always have, 2 or 3 photos to share. I'll never not have 2 or 3 photos that I'm proud of, whether my favorite 2 or 3 are like as good as your favorite photographer's 2 or 3, that's always up for debate. But, I know I can produce consistent work with my style and my brand.
And that's what your clients are paying for, consistency.
Yeah. Well, that's what any client's paying for. Like, I go into every shoot. I want to come out with the best possible image ever. But
some clients are like, "I got $50. What can you do?" You're probably not going to get consistency for $50.
Yeah, exactly. Luckily I don't have to take those jobs anymore. But yeah, I've had clients that go like, "Oh, well, we want our photos to look like these," and they show me like a Mercedes-Benz ad campaign, which probably cost millions of dollars to produce, with like tons of professionals from like all over working on it. And they're like, "Can you do this? Like, our budget's $30.
I can take a picture of that ad for you.
Yeah. Like, listen, when I was working at that e-commerce place, like I had someone that brought me, like they're like, the wallet isn't straight in this photo, And I'm going like, well, yeah, the zipper like distorts it when it's too tight, and like it's stuffed and everything. She's like, well, why is it like tight in this ad? And I'm like, guess what? I'm like, you're the retoucher. Guess whose job it is to straighten it out. Not my fucking job. You see how well lit this is? I'm like, that's like, I did my job. I'm like, yeah, you like, you know, like you don't like the like, you know, and it's like, she's literally showing me a Gucci ad, you know? I'm like, yeah, like, so that's part of the joys of, you know.
Yeah, part of the joys of your job is telling people to do their job.
Yeah, just the other month, not the other month, but, you know, pre-quarantine, I did photos for people. They weren't all done at the same time, so like we had them on everyone on the same background, and they wanted to put it together as a group photo. I said, listen, I can stitch them together in Photoshop. I said it's not going to be perfect. I'm not a graphic designer, but like I'll, you know, just so you can see how it looks, you know. And I did that, and they're like, oh, well, this is great, but you know what? This person's not really that tall, and maybe if you can just adjust it. And I said, you know what? Like I probably could adjust it. I said it's not my job. Like I took portraits of everyone. I took them at the same focal length. They were standing on the same spot. So like everything's to proportion. If you want me to like start fixing that, I'm like, you know what? That wasn't what was in the job outline. So like find someone else whose job is to do that. And like I said it like much nicer and professionally. And they were like, oh, okay, no problem. Well, we really like the photos. Like, thank you so much. Great. That's it, you know?
Okay, so as a professional photographer, people expect more from you than just taking pictures and producing pictures.
I mean, yeah, some people don't, yeah, some people always don't even know, like, what my job is. I don't even know what my job is. 'Cause people will say, like, well, what color dress should I wear? Like, what photograph's the best? And I'm like, well, that's, you know, like, like, I don't think I've ever seen a photo and I'm like, wow, if only that dress was lilac instead of, you know, burgundy, like this photo would have been so much better. And like, yes, when you're doing fine art photo, like styling and everything, it plays a big part, but I'm not a stylist.
Yeah, they show up in the clothes that they're getting their pictures taken in. You adjust the lighting as needed, and then bam, that's it.
And like, especially for a wedding, when people go like, what color dress do you think my bridesmaids should wear? I'm like, I don't know, like just, you know, do what you want.
Wow. Okay.
But like, so... I explain it better. I'm like, well, like, here are some photos of everyone wearing black. Here are some photos of everyone wearing white, you know? Like, you see how this vibe is a bit like lighter and airier, etc. This one's like a bit more moodier. You know, you do what you want. Like, and I'll make it look cool.
And that's where those people skills come into play.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're at the last part of this episode, the deliberate tip. What do you got?
Let's see, this week. One of the things that are starting out, when you're looking to like just photograph everything, like everyone in your family, everyone in your house, your dogs, you know, I'm sure we're gonna see some photos of some greyhounds soon. Yep. One thing to start being conscientious of, like after you've learned to like be aware of your subject, start being aware of the backgrounds and start looking for like simple backgrounds. The good thing about photography, the cool thing about photography is how we're freezing moments. It's fun to start looking things minimalistically. Whereas like a lot of our lives has lots of clutter. If you live in a city, you're always used to seeing like lots of layers in the background, traffic, signs, windows, etc. There's something just super pleasing to the eye when it's just like a captivating subject and then just like an empty sky or, you know, like a plain brick wall or something, you know, and then try to get interesting compositions, like where you're placing the subject in your image. So my deliberate tip for the week is like start trying to make simple photographs and then seeing how just like little micro movements can adjust the impact.
Okay. So keeping it simple in terms of background.
Yeah. Minimalistic,
not simple. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
Simplest
I mean,
is
they're interchangeable, but
I know minimalist sounds more fancy.
Yeah, if you say minimalistic, it's like you're purposely doing it. If you say simplistic, then it's...
If you say minimalistic, you can put a bigger price tag on it.
Yeah, exactly. It's by design.
There you go. I like that. Okay, so that's your deliberate tip. Use the word minimalistic in your discussion.
Yeah, exactly. Well, listen, when I say photojournalistic, people like to say candid. And I'm like, no, candid is what Uncle Jim does.
Photojournalistic, professional.
Exactly. It's lifestyle art.
Wow.
Don't get it twisted.
I gotta get this lingo down.
You'll get there. Don't worry.
Okay, so I think that's it.
Perfect.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Have a great week.
Cold ending?
Bye.
I put a question mark after cold ending. I don't know why I did that.
Yeah.
You don't ask if it's cold ending. That's not how a cold ending works.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. I hope you learned something or got some good laughs out of it. Check us out at mandapod.com. MANDAPOD.com. Thanks again.